So, in my cancelled Marvel movies video, I said I would make the same video for DC, and talk about some of their cancelled movies. I don't need to say much else, let's just get right into this. First up, the most famous cancelled DC movie of all time, and one of the most famous cancelled movies of all time, Superman Lives, which would have been directed by Tim Burton and come out in 1998. By the way, I wasn't joking when I said it was one of the most famous cancelled movies of all time. Like, a feature-length documentary was made about it. So that's gotta count for something. Anyway, the movie was gonna star Nicolas Cage as Superman, and from what I could find, the story was going to be a complete mess. First off, the villains were going to be Brainiac, Lex Luthor, Doomsday, and Elron, Brainiac's assistant. There were some drafts of the script that had Brainiac and Lex Luthor merge into one being, and also a version where Brainiac transformed into some kind of giant robot spider and would fight Superman in the climax of the film. Some sources also said that Superman wouldn't be able to fly, most likely because of some problems with the movie's budget. As for the rest of the cast, Kevin Spacey was approached to play Lex Luthor, Christopher Walken was going to play Brainiac, Dwight Eel was going to play Elron, Sandra Bullock, Julianne Moore, and Courtney Cox were approached to play Lois Lane, and Chris Rock was apparently going to play Jimmy Olsen. Michael Keaton also confirmed that he would be in the movie, but when asked if he was going to reprise the role of Batman, his only reply was, "Not exactly," which gives me the suspicion that he might have only had a cameo as Bruce Wayne, but not Batman. Anyway, the movie was cancelled after Warner Brothers got worried that the film would turn out like Joel Schumacher's Batman movies and be a massive flop. Now, would this have been a good movie? Even though this had some talent behind it, the movie's script and pre-production just sounded like it was going to be a huge mess, so my guess is that the film would have likely been kinda terrible. That said, I would have definitely wanted to see it just to know what it was like. Next up, Batman Triumphant, which was going to be the sequel to Batman and Robin, so I guess I don't really need to explain why it got cancelled. Anyway, George Clooney, Chris O'Donnell, and Alicia Silverstone were going to return, and Joel Schumacher was back to direct, with the movie coming out in the summer of 1999. The villains were going to be Harley Quinn, the Scarecrow, Man-Bat, and the Mad Hatter. As for the plot, Harley Quinn was going to be the Joker's daughter out for revenge on Batman for killing her father, and somehow Scarecrow, Man-Bat, and the Mad Hatter were thrown in there. So this ties into the first Batman than any other of Joel Schumacher's Batman sequels. So I guess that was kind of interesting. As for the rest of the cast, Madonna was going to play Harley Quinn, Mark Lynn-Baker was going to play Man-Bat, Martin Short was going to play the Mad Hatter, which is super ironic by the way, and Jeff Goldblum was rumored to play the Scarecrow, with Jack Nicholson returning as the Joker in some flashback scenes. So, would this have been good? No. Even though there was some interesting material, this would have just been directed by Joel Schumacher, who directed what is arguably one of the worst movies of all time, Batman and Robin. Next up, Superman Flyby, the 2004 Superman film that was going to be directed by J.J. Abrams. The plot of the movie, without getting too specific, had Krypton in a war between Jor-El and his brother Kar-El. Because Jor-El is worried about Kal-El's safety, he sends his son to Earth. Krypton, however, never explodes in this, there's just a war. Anyway, Kal becomes Superman, but Kar-El sends his son, Ty-Zor, to kill him. Superman is defeated and killed, but Jor-El senses it, so he kills himself, so he can go to Kryptonian heaven and resurrect his son. Superman then gets resurrected and defeats Ty-Zor. There was also another script that had a twist ending where it was revealed that Lex Luthor was actually a Kryptonian, just putting that out there. As for the cast, they were going to have Anthony Hopkins as Jor-El, Joel Edgerton as Ty-Zor, either Kerry Russell or Scarlett Johansson as Lois Lane, Shia LaBeouf as Jimmy Olsen, yes, you did hear that right, and Christopher Walken as Perry White. As for the role of Superman, many actors auditioned. Ironically, both Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill auditioned, along with Tom Welling, who was already playing Superman on Smallville. Some other actors who auditioned included Paul Walker, Ashton Kutcher, Josh Hartnett, Brandon Fraser, Victor Webster, David Francis, and Jude Law. Anyway, this got cancelled because the studio had more hope in Superman Returns and began work on that instead. Now, would this have been good? Well, even though I personally think J.J. Abrams is a good director, the story just seems like a giant mess. Finally, we have Justice League Mortal, the cancelled Justice League movie which was going to be directed by George Miller. In case you don't know, Miller directed all 4 Mad Max films, including Mad Max Fury Road, and some kids' movies like the Happy Feet movies. So he can obviously direct a whole range of different films. Anyway, the plot of the movie was going to be from the Flash's perspective, and Maxwell Lord would have been a villain who had an army of OMAC androids. As for the cast, the movie was going to have Adam Brody as the Flash, Armie Hammer as Batman, Carmen as Green Lantern, DJ Katrina as Superman, Megan Gale as Wonder Woman, Hugh Keith Bryan as Martian Manhunter, and Santiago Cabrera as Aquaman. So, would this movie have been good? Well, since the movie had George Miller as the director and a pretty great cast, I'd say that this may have actually been pretty incredible. Now, like in my cancelled Marvel movies video, I'm going to speed around for a few movies that I couldn't find that much information on. First off, Batman Beyond, which would have been set some decades in the future. The plot of this movie was going to follow Terry McGinnis taking care of an elderly Bruce Wayne, and later on would take on the role of Batman and fight crime. Bat-Hound was also going to be in the movie somewhere, so that's there too, I guess. Anyway, in the end, the film got cancelled to make the next film on the list, Batman Year One. This was obviously going to be based on the Batman Year One comic by Frank Miller, and was going to be directed by Darren Aronofsky, the director of films such as Requiem for a Dream, The Wrestler, Black Swan, and Noah. So, I'm guessing he would have made a pretty incredible Batman movie. Unlike the comic, the movie would focus more on Batman and Commissioner Gordon. Another big difference was that Batman would have actually been poor in the movie, and the Batcave was going to be under an abandoned gas station, which doesn't sound like the best idea. As for who was going to play Batman, Christian Bale was offered the role, but he turned it down, for now. Anyway, the film got cancelled to make the next film on the list, Batman vs. Superman. As for this movie, it was going to come out in either 2003 or 2004, and the script was already written. Anyway, there's a video of Mr. Sunday Movies skimming through the script, so I'll leave a link in the description to that video so you know what the story would have been. Anyway, based on that video, the movie doesn't sound like it would have been very good. Anyway, this got cancelled to make Catwoman. That's right, Batman Beyond, Batman Year One, and Batman vs. Superman got cancelled just to make Catwoman. Next up, the Plastic Man movie, directed by the Wachowskis. Back in 1996, the Wachowskis wrote a script for a movie based on the Plastic Man character. Also, in case you don't know, Plastic Man is basically Mr. Fantastic if his character was more comedic. Anyway, the origin story of Plastic Man was changed from the comic version, and the Wachowskis described the script as the closest to a comedy we'll write. But the movie didn't really work out because apparently Warner Brothers didn't like the script because the story wasn't very cohesive. Finally, we have Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman. In case you don't know, Whedon directed Serenity, Marvel's The Avengers, and Avengers Age of Ultron. So I'm pretty confident that he would have made a pretty awesome Wonder Woman movie. The plot was apparently going to be set in World War II, ironic by the way, and have Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor go on an adventure and fall in love. As for the role of Wonder Woman, well, many names were considered, but Joss Whedon was apparently going to cast Kobe Smulders, who actually went on to play Maria Hill in The Avengers. Anyway, the movie was cancelled after Joss Whedon dropped out because none of the crew were enthusiastic about the project and barely believed in him. Which really sucks because I would have watched a Joss Whedon directed Wonder Woman movie in a heartbeat. Anyway, those were my thoughts on some of the cancelled DC movies. Remember to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one.